Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, and welcome to the very first interview for the month of October here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today for our very first episode is an editor making her official debut here on the show. Now, our guest today is a fantasy and speculative fiction editor who's been writing since she could hold a pencil. She offers thoughtful, honest, strength based feedback tailored to her clients' goals, helping them evaluate or say elevate their stories without losing their voice. With a BA and MA in creative writing and over 10 years of experience in writing, critiquing, and editing, she'll help everyone's story shine through. And if you're looking for someone who understands what it's like to pour one's soul into a story, who will treat it like their own work with the care it deserves, she is the one for you. And to find all that and more, please make sure to check her out on her Instagram handle at Wild Blackberry Editing, which I'll provide the link down below, as well as other links towards the end of the interview. So without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to our first guest for the month of October, editor Amy Ford. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that really wonderful introduction and for giving me this opportunity to be here today.
You're welcome,
I'm very
Amy. You're
excited.
awesome. Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here. And it's also really cool that I'm getting a lot more editors on the show. I want to show everyone the other aspects of the publishing industry beyond authors, to show those behind the scenes, whether it's the artists or the narrators, and especially the editors, because they are extremely important to the creative process. And before we dive into your background as an editor, creating your brand, the Wild Blackberry Editing, which I absolutely love, I want to ask you this. Is there a fun fact that possibly your followers or fans may not know about you?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I love that. Well, since it's October, I am a massive Halloween fan. Absolutely love Halloween, all the spooky things that come with it. And every year I have a whole bunch of mini pumpkins surrounding me as I write and edit. So a little fun fact about me, absolutely crazy for Halloween.
Nice. Okay, Amy. Okay. And as an editor specializing in the genres that you are working on, are there any projects that you would like to name drop or showcase as little teasers into some of the work you've been a part of?
Yes, definitely. I'm currently working with Rachel Giffen, who is also my book coach. So we're doing a bit of trading there. She writes fantasy. She's currently editing and getting ready to publish a wonderful epic, which should be released next year. And I'm also going to be working with Steve Retker on his book Poisonous Recruit, which I think is also upcoming. Wonderful,
Nice.
interesting stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. So now let's dive right into the creation of Wild Blackberry Editing and your journey as an editor. So from your bio, you've always been passionate about the written word since you've been able to hold a pencil.
Yes.
And getting all that experience from your BA and MA in creative writing. I'm very curious. What would you say definitively was your aha moment that really put you on this path for editing?
Yes, that's a really good question. So it's kind of a long story, which I will keep short. But I started off wanting to be a writer from about 5 years old. And as I grew up, I realized I needed another job to support me while I wrote, as most writers find as they get a bit older and learn about the workings of the world. I knew I wanted to work with writers, or at least in the writing industry, but I wasn't really sure how. I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and there wasn't much out there about how you got into that kind of industry. I did editing on a voluntary basis while I was at college, which is slightly different in the UK to American college. It's kind of before you go to university, kind of in between normal school and university, for those who don't know. And so I did a little bit of voluntary editing for some writers that I met in college and on the platform of Wattpad. And I really enjoyed that experience. I really enjoyed the experience it gave me, interacting with other writers, the feedback that they gave me about how they loved my services and how my feedback really helped them. It was such a great experience. And I was like, cool, I'm going to go to university and then I'll become a writer and an editor. But after college and going to university, and where I was at university, I obviously helped other writers. We did workshops, we helped each other. I ended up getting stuck in customer service jobs after I left university, just because it paid the bills at the time. And I did apply to editing jobs, but unfortunately never was successful. But that was okay. You know, I was writing, I was helping other writers still, just on a non-professional basis. As in, you know, I wasn't a hired editor, I was just helping people. And I found a job that with a company that I really valued and I really enjoyed working for about 4 years. But I was unfortunately made redundant just a few months ago from that job. And it was at that point when I realized I no longer wanted to be in customer service. It no longer fulfilled me in the way that it used to. And I wanted to help people like me, other writers who didn't really know how to edit, because for a bit of background, my university course was in short stories. So I didn't know how to edit a novel. I had to self-learn how to edit a novel. And I wanted to help other writers who were in that same position of, how do I even edit a novel? And how do I find an editor that I can trust with my baby? Because, you know, most writers feel that their story is very precious to them. And that was kind of my aha moment, was, okay, my previous role was no longer working for me. I know I want to work with people like me. I now have the opportunity to explore this position. So why not? Why not give it a go? After many years of being a writer myself, of helping other writers, learning the tools of the trade through my university degrees, I felt truly prepared, and I've loved every minute.
No,
sorry.
No problem. This will all be cut in post, so all good. So now let's talk about your day-to-day life as an editor. I'm actually going to begin with a fan question for one of my viewers who asked, what was the most surprising aspect you learned about the editing process in your early stages in your career?
Yeah, I think the way that different people need different things. So, I mean, that sounds very obvious, right? Everyone's different, everyone needs different things. But when you look at a story from an outside point of view, stories have a structure, they have very similar needs, they have very similar things that they have to be a successful story, to be an interesting story, to be an engaging story. But stories aren't just frameworks and structures, they are also living things breathed into life by writers, right? You have to have the writer's heart, and every writer's heart is different. I write very differently to how other people write, and other people write differently to how I write. And it's learning those nuances and understanding what a writer needs and what they need to hear in terms of, I could give feedback about this, I could give feedback about that, I could give feedback about this, but what does this writer need? What does this writer want? And I think it was learning those nuances that was very, I wouldn't say surprising, but it was something I had to learn to always remember, that not everything that my brain points out is going to be something that writer wants pointed out.
Absolutely. Now, here's another fan question, and I don't know how much you can answer this because it may be talking a little more behind the scenes of your business, but they ask, what is sort of like a ritual or routine that helps you stand out as an editor in the publishing world? Because that's a big thing for us authors, whether you're indie, hybrid, traditional, is what are the different ways each editor can help that author shine. And that may touch on some more business stuff, so you can say as much or as little as you need to without giving too much of company information away.
No, of course. So one of the things that I do is strengths-based feedback, which is actually rooted in positive psychology. I know everyone hears the word psychology and, you know, it's a little bit woo-woo, but positive psychology is great, and it's something I actually recently discovered this year and became obsessed with. And strengths-based feedback is looking at what you're doing well as what could be improved. So again, that sounds kind of obvious, right? Everyone wants to know what they're doing right. But in my experience, not every editor will provide encouraging feedback as well as inline suggestions. They'll be like, this needs changing, this needs changing, this needs changing. But there's not an emphasis on what you're doing right. And that's what I do, because I feel that building up a writer's confidence, or rebuilding in some cases, is just as important as helping the story shine in the places where it needs improvement. And I think that really helps, because if you can go to an agent or a publisher confident that your story shines not only on a technical way, but it also shines because your strengths are in there and your heart's in there, it's going to make your story stand out so much more. And it's going to make you feel more confident when you submit it, which in turn the universe makes it stand out even more on that basis.
Very true. Very, very true, Amy. So ultimately, whenever you're working with a returning author or a new author, what ultimately is the need or desire you want to satisfy in your clients, as well as the promise you're making to them, as well as their prospective readers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my approach to editing has 4 mutual values. So transparency, kindness, authenticity, and respect. I will give these to my clients as much as I can. And as I said before, I also provide the strengths-based feedback. So everything I do is there to help build writers' confidence, helps them improve their story, amplifying their voice while also making it shine as much as possible. I don't want to dampen anyone's voices. I want them to be amplified. I want the story to be just as you want it, as much as we can get it. Obviously, not all stories never are as perfect as we want them to be, but getting them as best as they can be so you feel confident. And my promise is that I will always abide by those 4 values, and that editing with me will always be a collaboration, a partnership. It will never be a dictatorship. I will never say you have to make this change. I will help make your story shine as bright as it can, but never force you. So I provide feedback, and I provide feedback in the way I would want it to be provided to me. And I edit stories the way I wanted mine to be edited. Sorry, stumbled over a few words there. But that's the general idea, is I promise to always give you the kindness, the respect, the transparency, the authenticity, the feedback, the edits that I would want myself. Because if I'm going to deliver something that I wouldn't want, that's disingenuous of me. And that's not
Right.
That's not what I'm about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, another important question is, what I think is very important. When I actually spoke with a few other editor friends of mine, shout out to Ariel, Tatiana, and Becca Lee Johnson, they gave some really good insights for editors who want to get into this industry, is that if you want to specialize in, let's say, fantasy, thriller, or any kind of genre as the editor, it's always best to read those books to get a feel of the type of storytelling that is expected. For you in particular, Amy, from your bio, you are a fantasy and speculative fiction editor. Are those the genres that you like to read as a reader yourself? Or did you find those genres to be the most interesting to you, in the sense that, oh, I can work in these genres, they appeal more to me, even if I'm not a reader in those genres?
That's another brilliant question. I have always been a lover of fantasy and speculative fiction. It's what I've always read, it's what I've always written. I feel very much at home in those genres. So it was always the obvious choice for me.
Awesome. Okay. And for viewers who are unaware of the term speculative fiction, would you like to share with us, Amy, what speculative fiction actually is?
Yeah, of course. So speculative fiction is anything that asks what if, and is also set in a world that's not entirely ours. So you can have it in a world that is like Earth in the modern day setting. It'd be completely like our world, but there'll still be what if elements. So examples are alternative historical fiction. I think The Man in the High Castle, I think the book is called, I haven't read it myself, but I've heard great things about it. And that's alternative historical fiction, where I think the Germans won World War II, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. There's also dystopian, post-apocalyptic. So one of my favorites is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Brilliant book. Actually inspired my current novel that I'm editing myself at the minute. So it covers a whole wide of things, even time travel with speculative fiction. Anything that asks what if and is set in a world that has elements that aren't of this world is speculative fiction.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I like that. I like that term, speculative fiction. I may actually use that for my own books as well, because I have a few that are in the realms of alternate history, and now I know what the actual category is now. So thank you for that, Amy. Really do
You're most
appreciate it.
welcome.
And speaking again on books, in your career as an editor, this is another fan question one of my viewers asked, what has been your favorite scene or moment to edit with an author, as well as the most challenging scene to edit or potentially discuss with the author in terms of revision?
Those are some really good questions. I'm loving these fan questions. So just for my memory, one I really enjoyed and one I found challenging. Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
So one that I've really enjoyed doing very recently was, I have a few. I'm trying to think of the best one to use in this example here. I'll go to one of my first clients. So there was a really wonderful scene with two characters who meet for the first time, and I can't really reveal too many details
Of course.
for client confidentiality on their story.
Mhm.
But it was a really interesting story with a really interesting message. Really wonderful. I can't wait for it to be out there in the world. And there's these really interesting characters that met, and I really enjoyed them, like finding each other, and it's a very playful finding of each other. They're quite young characters, so the interaction between young characters is a wonderful thing. Sometimes it's very innocent, very pure. I find a lot of adult audience fiction, sometimes it's a little more on the playfully flirty side, which is great. I love the playful flirty meets, but I also sometimes really enjoy those innocent I'm a child, you're a child, hi. I miss a lot of the wonder that we've lost as adults in the world. So that always is nice. Brings me back to when I was a child meeting new people. And a particularly challenging one, I think very recently again, would be a wonderful book. Again, I can't really divulge too much information, but wonderful book with a really interesting twist. But it's a twist that is very difficult to write. And so trying to work with the client on how to write it in a more effective way was challenging for me, because I always try to make sure that I don't come across as harsh. I try and do that whole strengths-based with a little bit of improvement. And I know how, as a writer myself, I know how hard it is sometimes to hear this isn't quite right. So I always challenge myself to find better ways to say this isn't quite right, and this needs improvement, because so that was a bit challenging in the sense of I just wanted to make sure that they still felt confident, because the twist was so great. It was just the mechanics needed a little adjustment. I hope that helps answer the question.
Oh yes, very true, very true. And actually, in regards to the second part of the question, the challenging aspects, that's something we're going to be touching on when we get to the business side, go a little more in depth on that in terms of, edits versus revision, maintaining the author's voice. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit more about you again, Amy, in terms of, what has the response been like? So after working with a few clients in your career, what was sort of the response from these authors you work with, as well as friends and family who learned that you are embarking on a new journey as an editor? And that's actually a question I did want to ask you, Amy. The term Wild Blackberry Editing, how did that name come about? Because it's such a very inviting name. I don't know what it is, but whenever I say it, I smile. And I'm very curious, what was the thought process behind that name? That's a very cool name for a company.
Thank you. I love that it makes you smile when you say it. That's really nice, cool to hear. So Wild Blackberry Editing came to me because when I was very, very little, my mum and I had this great tradition of we would go blackberry picking every autumn.
Ooh.
I am a fiend for blackberries. Absolutely love them. And the first time my mum took me, I was her first child, so she didn't quite realize how messy children get. And I was in charge of holding the pot in my little pram. I had a white t-shirt on. My mum was putting the blackberries in, kind of absentmindedly, not paying attention to me. And she turned back around and I was purple-faced, purple shirt, no blackberries in sight. Since then, I've kind of been a fiend for them. And every year we go blackberry picking. And I actually went through a lot of trauma throughout my teenage years, and I lost a lot of memories. I went through a lot of therapy, and the therapy really helped start bringing some of those memories back. And one of the first memories I got from my childhood was the blackberry picking. So it has a lot of meaning for me, a lot of nostalgia, and a lot of mental health connections for me as well. So while blackberry editing, it felt just right because it was such a big part of my life. And then kind of on the other side of it, brambles are very hard to get rid of, and they're very beautiful. They're beautiful flowers, beautiful fruit, but they're very prickly. And I feel like that describes editing very well. Like, editing is removing those little thorns and making the flowers and the blackberries like grow big and strong and healthy and beautiful, and removing those thorns so that your story can just be as brilliant as it can be.
Nice. Very, very nice. Thank you for sharing with that, Amy. That was really, really cool. So now jumping forward ahead, these are some reflective questions. So the first one is, of course, what does it mean to be a creator, an independent person in the publishing industry in the digital age? Because the industry has greatly changed. And I remember asking this question to other editor friends of mine about what it means to be an editor in today's digital age and trying to market oneself, because it's not easy. It is not easy to market oneself, to make those connections, because most editors are usually either part of a major company or like a major publishing house, whereas now you have a lot more freelance editors trying to grow their own brand. Some are successful if they already have that business mindset. Others do struggle if the business mindset is not really there, but they do make those connections. And unfortunately, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this too, Amy, is that while social media is a great tool for us independent creatives, it's also a curse. It can be very emotionally draining, very taxing, and above all, we leave ourselves exposed to a lot of negativity and just hate speech, trolls, spam. I think I remember one editor friend of mine, she likes to post books that she's worked on to promote like herself. And I don't remember if this happened before we met or after, but she did mention some instances of people commenting on those pages of the books she specialized in. And it was a lot. It was a lot for her to take in. And of course she shrugged it off, but it's like exhausting to try to remove that stuff. So ultimately, tying all that together, for you, Amy, what has disciplined you to be the best editor you can be in today's digital climate?
Yeah, no, again, really interesting question and subject. I was very lucky in the sense that my book coach, Rachel Giffen, and I have also become friends, like professionally and personally. So she book coaches for me, I edit for her, but outside of that, we are also quite close. And one of the things that she's really helped me with when I made the decision to go into freelancing as an editor is she helped teach me everything that she knows about running your own business, as she's been self-employed, freelancing, whatever you want to call it, for a while now as well. So I was very lucky in the sense that I had a mentor, I had somebody to guide me, but it is still challenging even on my own. She doesn't hold my hand every step of the way, she just gives me that guidance, and I'm so grateful for her. I don't think I would be as confident as I am without her. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, and one of the things that I try and hold true to, is I really had to let go of my people pleasing. I am a big people pleaser. And I found working for big companies kind of helped emphasize my people pleaser. I always wanted them to like me so I didn't get fired. But now that I'm my own boss, essentially, I don't really have that much fear anymore in terms of, oh, if someone above me doesn't like me, they won't hire me. If a client doesn't want to hire me, I know it's not personal. And that has taken me some time to accept as a people pleaser, that if a client doesn't want to work with me, it's not necessarily because of me. Not every editor is right for every story. And I think that's one of the things I had to learn is you need to be a tree in this industry. You need to be strong enough that you can withhold against the strong winds, the hardships, the trolls, the long hours, the constant figuring out algorithms and posting.
Yes.
But you also need to be flexible like a tree. You know, trees can be hard and solid, but they can also be flexible and bend with kindness and understanding for both yourself and other people out there. I find a lot with trolls and people who try to put other people down is because they're insecure about something to do with themselves. So instead of taking it personally, I try and adopt a position of kindness and just think, okay, they're having a bad day. They're clearly feeling insecure about something. I'm just going to ignore that. Or, you know, if I feel like responding, I'll be like, I'm so sorry, you're having a bad day. You know, I know it's easier said than done, but in this industry and in the digital age, it's just best just to try and not take things personally, try not to be that people pleaser, and just believe in yourself and know that you have worth regardless of whether or not somebody else agrees with that.
Very true. Very, very true. And the next reflective question, which I again want to hear your thoughts on, is this notion of, are we in a golden age or an iron age? Now I'll get some context for this question. So I've been doing this show now for about 6-7 years, respectively, combining Spotify, Anchor, and now YouTube. Out of 400, and I want to say 41 videos, if you broke that down, that's 191 authors, almost 30 plus academics, 30 plus book reviews, and about 20 or so industry experts, which includes narrators, editors, and publishing agents. And it's absolutely insane the amount of people that I've met in such a short time. It is insane. And what I've learned from them, especially a good majority from them, is that we all began our careers respectfully during the lockdown years. And this has sparked a conversation in the community of, because of the lockdowns, are we in a golden age? Some people say yes because of the amount of talent that's in the industry. But as time has gone on, people have now shifted away from this golden age to more of an iron age because the market has been so saturated with new authors, narrators, editors, and artists. It's good to have new voices and new talent. But ultimately, which I'm sure you'll definitely agree, Amy, is that if you are an independent, a freelancer, this is not an industry that's a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a grind. It is hustle and bustle. And I think a majority of people who joined this industry thought they could make a quick buck. I'm sorry to say, viewers and listeners, that is not the case. I've been a writer now for about 5 years. I published 3 books, 4th one on the way. It's not easy. Very taxing. It's very grinding. And I'm sure Amy can also agree that being an editor is also grind. I mean, it is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a lot of, fact-checking, combing through everything, probably doing background checks on author to see, do I want this person to be part of my portfolio or stuff like that? It's a lot of things to consider. But with all of that said, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, Amy, from your own experiences of whether or not we are in a golden age or rather in a new age / iron age.
That's a very interesting topic again. I think I've heard quite a few people have this kind of discussion before. And I think, to be honest, I think we are still in the golden age. I think there are so many different options now for publishing. Like, it used to be just traditional, then it was just traditional and self, and now there's so many others out there. There's even platforms like Campfire Writing who are now do publishing through them. And there's all the usual suspects: Kindle, Amazon, and self-publishing. There's so many different routes, and traditional publishing isn't really getting the amount of respect that it used to, because it's not really catching up with the times. And a lot of people don't want to lose their creative license. A lot of traditional publishing, you do lose a creative license. You have a contract you have to adhere to, and that works for some people. Some people are happy with that. I don't judge either way. I'm not about that. But there are so many more options now, and there are so many new voices, like you said. And I think, especially with the AI scare of AI writing books for everyone as well, I think that the more new authentic voices that we have, the better. And the more that we can inundate the industry with authentic people, with real people, real authors with something to say, or just magical worlds they want to share, I don't see how that could ever be a bad thing, or a not progressive thing. I think we are living in a very lucky age where we can do almost anything that we want. Yes, it may not make us, a lot of money, but at the end of the day, just getting a story out there has got to be worth something.
Yes, that is very true. I'm also glad you brought up the topic of AI, because that's another thing I want to hear your thoughts on. Is AI has definitely changed the industry, for better or for worse, however you look at it. Some people would say for worse, because it does allow people to crank out so many books in a short amount of time. And my comment to that is AI creates a false sense of creativity because it mass produces it on a scale, on a global scale. And I know there's a lot of discussion of AI being a big no-no, as it should, in terms of, being used for other stuff beyond, an organizer. I've had a lot of my illustrator friends make comments on it, how it does take away the value of hand-drawn artwork and illustration, especially for book covers. And especially for my friends in the narration and voice acting world, that's a big thing, with their voices being licensed without their consent, or AI narration taking over. And also this notion of editing as well. Now, every software is going to have an editing program built into that. Microsoft Word, Google. Then you have the externals, Grammarly, which I have used for myself and for my books. But I also work with my own editor as well. So I do all the edits first with Grammarly, and then I work with my editor, because I do want to hear that. I do want to see those human responses in terms of, like, the feedback, as you said, Amy, of what can be changed, what can be improved upon, and what needs to be fixed. Because you don't get that with a program. You don't get that authentic connection. And I would actually like to hear your thoughts on if AI has sort of dampened or shifted the editing world, and how editors like yourself are dealing with it, where some people could say, oh, I don't need an editor. I can just use a software to edit all of my books, and I can be free to go.
Yeah, no, again, a very interesting conversation that has been so prevalent over the last few years. I think I'm going to answer this question from my own perspective and my own thoughts on AI. I respect everyone's opinions. Like I said, I do not judge. I really don't care what other people think about AI. That's their own prerogative. But for me personally, I always suggest, or recommend at least, that writers edit themselves at least once before they give it to a professional anyway. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you money, because the more polished your story is when you give it to an editor, the less you're going to have to keep going back to them and paying them again for another round of edits. So my recommendation is always try, at least if you have the confidence to, or the skills, the tools, whatever it is you need to feel like you can do it, to go and do a round of edits before giving it to an editor. That's up to people if they want to do that or not. I know some clients who didn't want to do that and just gave it to me straight away. I know some clients who did all the editing before they gave it to me. Everyone's different. And I think if you are someone who wants a bit of help doing that round of edit yourself, or you don't know how, or you're unconfident, but you know you need to do it, I think it's perfectly fine reaching out to an AI like Grammarly, ProWriting Aid, all the other ones that are available out there, as long as they don't use your writing to train their AI, because AI has been around for a very long time. generative AI is the one that's very recently come about, the one
Yes.
that's potentially causing all these problems. But AI itself has always existed. Microsoft has always been an AI. Microsoft Word has always had an AI in it. And using those AIs, I think is perfectly fine. And I have on occasion used generative AI to brainstorm ideas when my brain has been very stuck, or if I haven't had a writing friend to talk to and I've been like, is this a good idea? I have occasionally used generative AI to help me in that sense. I wouldn't personally use it for my own writing. I have used tools like Writing Aid to help me edit my own work. I don't use it to edit clients' work. I do that all myself.
Mhm.
But I have used it on a personal level to just pick up on the things that I'm missing. I'm also human.
Right. Very
But when
true.
but when it comes to actually editing something, I will always recommend that you go with a professional to get that heart, to get that personal touch, and just use AI as a supplementary tool, as something to help guide you. But I wouldn't recommend writing books with it. I hope that answers the
No.
question. I feel like I've gone off a little
Oh
bit.
no, that perfectly does answer the question. And that actually kind of leads now into the business side of being an editor. Now, it's a little icebreaker question for you, Amy. This is also another fan question. One of my viewers asked, looking back on your career thus far, is there anything you would have done differently in terms of creating your brand, promoting your services, and whatnot?
That's a very good question. I don't think so in terms of the technical side of things. I think on a personal level, I would have tried to be more confident. I was very nervous when I started out. The trauma that I went through as a teenager was very camera focused. So being on camera for a very long time was very distressing to me. So I was really nervous on camera. You can really tell that I didn't want to be on camera. So I think for me, it's just more confidence. Getting over that kind of hurdle before I went straight into recording videos. But then again, some people actually enjoyed that kind of honest transparency of seeing somebody who was very awkward on camera. But like I said before, I was very lucky in the sense that I had a mentor who already gave me a step in the right direction. They already gave me a little bit of advice. To anyone who doesn't have that advice, I think I would say the same thing. You need to be confident. You need to be consistent with your posting, whatever you choose to do. And I think one of the greatest tips that I was given is pick one outlet, get really good at that outlet, and then move on to another one. So if you want to start with an Instagram account, make your Instagram content really great. Really focus on being the best that you can be on your Instagram account, and then move on to a website and then move on to a newsletter, whichever order you want to do it in. Just become really great at one thing at a time. If you juggle too many eggs, you're going to drop one.
Yes, I 100% agree. Absolutely. And now that actually goes to a question which I've been thinking about for a while now, especially for editors, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Amy, is that from the author's point of view, when we think of editors, we think of, oh, someone that's going to, help with our books. But as time has gone on, or as it's become more prevalent, editors are also broken down into different categories. You have proofreaders, copy editors, and so forth. And then you also have editors that are more reader based than genre based. And what I mean by that is you have, on someone's profile, it could be, oh, I'm an AF editor, which is adult fiction, or I'm a new age editor, or YA, or middle grade. And that's like, okay, so that's only the category that they are comfortable writing in types of books. But then when you go into, let's say, the editor who specializes in genre, well, that could be very, very big. But looking at it from another perspective, now you also see the argument of just because someone is a genre editor, in the case for you, Amy, as a fantasy and speculative fiction editor, that's not a guarantee that you are an all reader editor in the sense that you edit adult fiction, new adult, YA, and middle grade. You may only have a small selection of reader groups that you are interested in. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Amy, and like almost like a PSA for authors who are really trying to find a good editor and what they should look for, as well as questions they should be asking themselves, as well as the editor that they wish to work with?
Yeah, no, wonderful question again. For me personally, I edit anything from middle grade all the way to adult. I really enjoy middle grade fiction. It takes me right back to being a kid. But I also enjoy young adult, new adult, adult. I enjoy all the ranges. I also edit novellas and short stories as well as novels. So I've really branched out my services just because I have the knowledge, I have the experience, and I have the passion for those things. Editors will niche themselves where they want to niche. So even if you're in the like you said, some will only do adult fiction, some will only do spicy, some will only do closed door. I myself prefer to do closed door for personal reasons, but that's just me. That's just one of my stipulations. When it comes to finding an editor for your book, it's definitely important to find out what genres and what audiences, and also what story types of short stories, novellas, novels that they edit. Some editors, may be like me, where you might have a story that doesn't quite fit into their genres, but it's something that they are also passionate about outside of their genres. So, for example, Steve Retker's book that I'll be working on, The Poisonous Recruit. I may be getting this wrong, but I don't think there are any fantasy or speculative fiction. I might be getting that wrong. I know it's definitely set in history. It's a historical thriller.
Ooh.
And yeah, I'm very excited to work on that because I am a massive history nerd.
Oh, then you're definitely going to love my stories, which I'll tell you at the very end, because you may get a kick out of those.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing about them. So when he approached me, I was like, oh, well, there's not, as far as I could tell from the inquiry form, there's not any fantasy or speculative fiction elements here, but I love history. So I'm willing to take this one on. And, so some editors may be like that. So if you find an editor that you really love and they've listed their genres and it's not what you write in, it's always worth reaching out and being like, hey, I really want to work with you. This is my genre, would you consider it? Because, if you don't ask, you don't know. And there's a good chance that they may be like, yeah, that sounds great, definitely. Most editors should have it listed what they do, but if it's not clear, always feel free, always reach out. Always have the confidence to reach out to an editor if you're not sure. Because not only could that lead to you working with them if you want to, but it also gives them great feedback of, hey, it's not clear enough of what I do. And then that's really good feedback for editors or anyone in any kind of business to know if they're being clear or not.
Very true. And this is a question that I don't really ask a lot, but I think it is important, is the power of saying no. And what I mean by that is, which I've shared on numerous other interviews, especially for industry experts, is for you guys, as well as artists and narrators, when working with authors, of course, you do vet, you find out, okay, is this person really good for me? And sometimes it doesn't come out till much later. But I think it is important for editors who also, and for anyone, to have the power to say no, especially if you're working with someone that's like, either the book isn't in your genre, it's like, this is a really good book, but I don't know if I'm the best editor for it, so I have to say no. Or there are some scenes in it which you were not made aware of that you were led on to believe, and it's like, I can in good conscience edit this book. So, Amy, I would like to again hear your thoughts on this, and really telling fellow editors that they have the power to say no, regardless of who the author is. Either it's, an established author or a new author, or just any author in general, or any person in general.
Yeah, I completely agree with the power of saying no. It's one of the things I was talking about earlier of like stopping being a people pleaser, because if you say yes to everything, it not only hurts you, but it can also hurt your client. Because if you aren't knowledgeable in a genre and you take it on, so for example, like the historical thing, I already know that genre. I love that genre. I read that genre. So I knew that I was able to edit Steve Retker's work. I know that it was a story I was going to enjoy. But if I didn't know the genre and I wasn't comfortable doing it, but I still went ahead and did it, my feedback would not be as good as it could be. That then affects his work and then his potential future with that book. So saying yes to everything hurts both you and other people. And you've really got to protect your peace. So if you come across something, I have a great example. So when I first started out, I was worried that I would have to say yes to everything that came my way. Like, I no longer have a steady income. I'm, just starting out this freelance. I've, been made redundant from my job. I need to make this work if I want to continue doing it. And I was really worried I would have to, or what if I got a thing that I didn't want to do, would I have to say yes to keep going? And one thing I had to learn was that you have to stand by your principles. It's the thing with being a tree, the analogy I gave earlier. You have to stick to your principles, be firm against that wind that wants you to bend your principles.
Mm-hmm.
But you can bend sometimes when kindness and understanding calls for it, like with Steve Retker, didn't really write in the genre, at least as far as I can understand that book is in that genre. But it's something I could do. So great, we'll bring that in. But one of the first 5 or 10 inquiries I got was a story that I couldn't write. I couldn't edit, sorry. It was in contemporary romance, which is a great genre. Anyone can read whatever they want to read. It's not my favorite. And for that reason, I couldn't edit it because I don't know much about the contemporary romance genre. I know that there are different nuances in there, like there's meet cutes, there's this, there's that. There's things in there that I wouldn't have professional or personal knowledge on. And they also included scenes that I wasn't comfortable editing. There was open door, there was sexual assault, there were all these things that I could not, for personal reasons, edit myself. And so I did say, I'm really sorry, that unfortunately I'm not the right editor for this story. And there have been at least 5 instances where I've had to say, I'm sorry, but I'm not the one for you. In those cases, I again still try to be as kind and respectful as possible. I know how hard rejection can be, so I always, reiterate to authors that it's not their story that's the problem. It's just my preferences do not align, my comfort levels do not align, whatever it is. But you have to protect your peace as well as the peace of somebody else, because if you sever that tie by being like, no, sorry, and you're really cold about it, that person may not come to you in the future when they have a story that you could write. And it's all about warmth, it's all about connection, especially in the writing industry. We all have to be kind to each other. There's too many trolls, too much hate on writing and editing and the whole industry. We all need to be kind to each other.
Very true. And this is actually a quick little question. This actually is another viewer who especially watches my narrator interviews who ask, I understand that, and he's referring to narrators, that narrators have what they call the 15-minute mark, where they will do a voice or record a scene for first 15 minutes for authors to listen to and get a feel for if this is the right narrator for them. Do you believe, Amy, that editors should implement something similar? I know there's a consultation, but you think there should also be another step forward, which is like the first 15 minutes. Like here's like a quick edit in the first 15 minutes. So that way an author can really get an idea of like, okay, if this is like the first 15 minutes, is this the right editor for me? Or this is just reconfirming that I've chosen right?
Yep. Many editors that I know do offer a free sample. That means you can send them 500, 1,000. Each editor has their own preference on the workout. But you send them a chunk of your text, and they basically do like an edit on that text for you with the service of your choice, whether it's developmental edit, copy line editing. And then that gives you the same kind of thing, really, because you're able to see what kind of feedback they provide and whether or not that aligns with your expectations and your needs. I offer it to writers, like I have it there. It is something that I can do, but I'm in a weird situation where no one's actually asked it of me. They've all just been very trusting, and I'm very lucky to have worked with such wonderful clients. But yes, most editors, even if they don't directly advertise it anywhere, if you ask for a free sample, most editors, if not all editors, are happy to provide that for you.
Very true. Very, very true. We're almost nearing the end of this amazing interview, and we're almost down to the last few questions. I'm going to combine some of them as two-parters. Now, And we have talked about a lot of great things, but I think the one thing that is important to touch upon is when it comes to that final rounds of edits, those final rounds of revisions. So for you as an editor, reading the same story numerous times over, you've done everything you can. At what point do you feel that the story has come to an end in terms of the edits? And as an editor working with the author, yes, the author has to make the editing themselves, but how do you help the author ensure that the ending that they've landed upon, that they know that this is how they want their book to end, feels satisfying?
Oh, those are very good questions again. So for the first part, I think it's all about that confidence level and reading through it and making sure that there's no it's mostly about the glaring mistakes. Like when you have glaring mistakes, you know that you need to keep editing, that things aren't quite right, like consistency issues, people having different colored eyes and different colored chapters, and plot scenes that don't make sense, plot twists that don't quite pay off, setups and the payoffs don't quite match. Once you read a story and you're like, okay, everything flows right, everyone's got the same eye color the whole way through, all the plot twists have been, set up and paid off correctly, there's no glaring holes. I think that's when you and also the reader, no, sorry, the author feels confident reading it and like, yes, this is how I fall as close to as I want it. I think that's when you know that it's done. Obviously, a book is never quote unquote done. Like everyone's always going to want to keep editing it. There's always going to be one typo that sneaks in there somewhere. But once you've got it as good as you can get it and you're happy with it, and you're like, yes, I feel in myself that I can now pass this on to somebody, a stranger, the world, to read. I think that's when you know that it's done. In terms of helping writers make sure that their ending is the way that they want it and that it all connects the way that it should, that all should happen in the developmental edit stages. And it's just making sure that all the setups are paid off. Anything that's left open intentionally, either for a sequel or whatever, is clear that it's intentionally left open and it's not done in a confusing way. It's just tying up those loose ends, making sure everything's pretty. I often describe editing as weaving a tapestry. And when you finish a tapestry, they cut off the bottom so everything's nice and neat. And it's kind of just doing that, making sure everything's tied up and that everything that's left open is clearly left open for a reason.
Awesome. And here's the final fan question, which I think you may have touched on, but maybe you can go a little bit more in depth. So you've name dropped your friend Griffin throughout this interview, who has been not only a great work colleague and companion, but also a very good friend. And my viewer asks, are there any other people you would like to give a shout out to who have helped you on your journey, both professionally and personally?
Oh, again, such wonderful questions. I think the biggest people who've supported me have probably been my partner. I know that's a very cheesy thing to say, but my partner of 14 years, my mother, and my best friend. They're not professionals in this industry, any of them, but they have been my rock, my support. I know lots of writers that are brilliant people who have also supported me. There are too many to list and to name here, but they know who they are. Yeah, it's weird. I've only really been introduced to people in this industry in the last year, really. So there's not too many that I can list out. But yes, Rachel Giffen, my book coach, my best friend, my partner, my mom. Very cheesy little people there, but I think those are the best people to have in your life, are the ones who really support you.
Awesome. And now we arrive at the final two questions, Amy, of this incredible editor interview. So we talked about a lot of great things throughout this interview, and you've definitely showcased who you are as an editor as well as a person. So the first question of the two-part is, what do you want authors to take away from you as an editor as well as a reader in the genres that you're working on? And finally, with everything you've learned in your career thus far and still learning along the way, what is your word of wisdom, your piece of advice that you would like to instill upon future editors, either currently in school trying to pursue this as a career, or those who edit on the side but want to grow their brand?
Yeah, both great questions. So for writers, I want clients to feel as though they've had a really positive experience that was unique to them, because writers are really unique and brilliant people, every single one of them. Me included, I'll include myself in that. I am a writer as well. I don't think I'm unique and brilliant, but I am a writer, so I'll throw myself in there. But writers are brilliant, unique people, and we need their voices in the world. And so I want them to feel as though they're not just another client. They're not just a number or a listed book on my portfolio. They are a real person. They are a person who is valued, and that they've had a positive, tailored experience that has made them feel like they are my only client in the world. I want them to feel encouraged, and I want them to feel inspired. And that's why I go the extra mile for my clients. That's why I treat them the way that I do. That's why I give them the editing that I do, because I provide the service that I would want. And I just want them to come away feeling satisfied and like they've made a friend almost, like we're not just professional and client. I like to build a connection with people. And in fact, that was actually reflected in a review that I received from a client today, who said that working with me was like working with a trusted friend, not a daunting stranger. And that really touched my heart and made me cry a little bit. Can you just remind me what the second half was?
Of course, the second half was, and I think you're alluding to it. The second half was, with everything you've learned in your career and still learning thus far, what is your word of wisdom to future editors listening to this episode or watching this episode right now?
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, definitely treat clients like they are individuals. That treat them as you would want to be treated. But also, you can do it. It doesn't matter your age, your professional experience, your qualifications. If you have the heart in you and you want to, and the desire, and you want to do something like going into editing, either for a company or freelancing, then do it. Lean into that. Make the scary jump into the unknown. You can learn skills, you can gain experience, you can achieve qualifications, but heart, desire, willpower, those are already within you. You just got to harness them. But also make sure you have a support system on the hard days where you feel like you just want to quit and go and hide in a blanket fort somewhere. Have that support system always.
Very true. Very, very true, Amy. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude our first ever interview for the month of October. I want to give a huge thank you to Amy Ford for coming on the show and making her official debut. And Amy, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out to you and connect and possibly schedule you to do a consultation? And just as before, what are some of the projects that you're going to be working on, as well as possibly some books you previously worked on that will be coming out soon?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been a real pleasure being here. Talking to you has been great. You can find me on Instagram with my handle at Wild Blackberry Editing, and in my bio you'll be able to find my inquiry form. It's just got a few questions about you and your story, so I can make sure that I'm the best fit for you and your story. And then I'll send you a non-obligation quote if we are a right fit. I do actually also offer resources on my store. That's payhip.com/wildblackberryediting. These are resources to help writers with editing, including my developmental editing for fantasy and speculative fiction writers course, which help writers untangle developmental editing. And I also have a podcast with Rachel Giffen called Your Field Guide to Fiction Writing. So you can find me in lots of different places. And I'm also working, as I mentioned, on Rachel Giffen's book, The Song of the Blackthorn Tree. That's coming out next year. And Steve Retker's The Poisoner's Recruit, which I believe is also coming out next year. I have worked on some books that are also in the publication process or nearing that stage, but unfortunately I'm not allowed to list them at the moment due to client confidentiality preferences.
Of course. And viewers and listeners, if you would like to see Amy back on again, possibly this time in an author interview because, as she mentioned earlier in this interview, she is also working on her own book. If you would like to see her back again in her very own author interview, comment down below, like this video, and subscribe. And as always, viewers and listeners, thank you again so much for your love and support. This month is going to be an incredible month of October. I have a lot of incredible plans, a lot of special episodes coming out soon. So make sure to follow me on all my social media to stay up to date, as well as follow Amy Ford for all new details and all information. And as she mentioned before, if you want to work with her as your editor, make sure to fill out that application and just get the ball rolling. And as always, viewers and listeners, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day, wherever you are in the world. We'll see you all in the next episode.